Well, hello. This is Yuris Kaja coming at you again from Riga, just to update you on things for my English speaking or listening or whatever watching audience. It's kind of the summer doldrums here in Latvia, although at the end of the month we have a municipal extraordinary election coming up. We're electing a new city council after the old one in Riga was fired for basically a lot of shady dealings that they had, and the mayor was also fired, and he's now Neil Sushakovs. He's now a Euro parliamentarian in Brussels. Some people said he sort of escaped to there. But there are 15 tickets running. I think I read a brief description of them in a recent video blog that I did. And campaigning is getting off. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, on Facebook, people profiling themselves, presenting arguments as to why they are the best for the job, why they should be ticked off on the ticket. This is a thing you can do. You can put check marks to people that you like, and you can cross out people that you don't like. I mean, there are 60 seats to be filled on this city council, so I think many of the tickets are running, like almost 60 candidates. So there you have it. Now, according to the latest polls, the electoral coalition, or whatever you want to call it, between the For Development For and the Progressives, which are kind of progressives are kind of social democrats, For Development For are kind of left-leaning liberals. They seem to be taking the lead in some serious voter polls, just a few fractional percentage points ahead of the Harmony, who also call themselves Social Democrats and who are the party of the former mayor and former city council. Then the rest of the tickets are sort of divided all over the place. And this is, of course, going to be the big problem when the election is over. How do you form a stable and working majority, especially when there are a lot of contradictions among the different tickets? What they all have in common is they don't want a repeat of what Riga had for the past 10 years when Neil Sushakovs and his people were in charge, and there was a waste of money left and right, and the Riga Public Transport Organization became a black hole for money going down the drain to subsidize it, and a lot of other weird stuff was going on. But who has a singular vision of what's going on in Riga? That's going to be a tough question. As I said before, the National Alliance doesn't want any pride marches in this town, and they're going to kind of take a fairly hard line on that. The progressives and the For Development For, which is a weird combination, not the Electoral Alliance, so I'll touch on that later. They favor things not for this election, but eventually they would like to see non-citizens be able to vote in municipal elections, which is something that is done in Estonia. I mean, the Russians haven't taken over Estonia. People say that if that would have happened here, the Russians would get Riga. But the Russians had, quote unquote, if you consider Harmony as kind of a pro-Russian party, well, they had Riga for 10 years. I mean, what would possibly change? So then that is, of course, something that the nationalists or the more nationally inclined parties are totally opposed to. They don't want any votes for non-citizens, not even other European Union citizens who live here, like Germans or Swedes. They would be excluded. Now, in Sweden, non-citizens can vote in local elections. In fact, I voted in a couple of Swedish local level elections, living in Sweden as a non-citizen. So it's not a big deal for me, at least. Well, next week coming up, this thing keeps falling out. Next week coming up is the 100th anniversary of the Latvian peace treaty with what was then Soviet Russia. And, you think back on that, well, what could possibly go wrong? Signing a treaty with Soviet Russia in 1920. Well, take out your history books and you'll see what could possibly go wrong. Nonetheless, there's going to be a meeting of foreign ministers of Poland, Estonia, and Finland, and Latvia here to mark that event. We are now getting into a kind of second stage of all of these 100-year anniversaries because 100 years of Latvian independence in 2018, celebrating what happened in 1918, was only the beginning of a whole series of processes, including an out-and-out kind of semi-civil war that raged here from 1919 on for a couple of years, the War for Liberation. So all of these events, and then there was a constitutional constituent assembly, and a number of other events here that will probably take us into 100-year celebrations for the next couple of years. So that's that. Interesting what they're going to say at the 100th anniversary of the Russian peace treaty. I might go and cover that if somebody's interested in the story. Anyway, the weather is nice, getting hot again. It has not been a very hot summer. Yet again, thinking about the decision last summer when we were renovating our apartment to get air conditioners for it, but they're necessary from time to time. What else is there to say? Yes, this is Bob Marley. It's not Che Guevara, as somebody commented on Twitter or wherever. But that's Latvia for you. You express anything to the left of Genghis Khan, and you are a liberast, which is an interesting word, liberasts in Latvian, or you're a neo-Marxist or whatever. I mean, if you are for normal human rights for LGBT people, and if you are not someone who exists in a state of total and complete paranoia about any kind of refugees or immigrants here. I think we're less than 50 in Latvia at the moment in the refugee processing center that we have in a place called Mucinieki. Some of them are from weird places like Georgia and elsewhere, and they're not, all sort of stereotype jihadists with a curved dagger in their mouth, waiting to jump on people. This is the image. This is the image a lot of Latvian kind of right wingers who seem to sort of flock to my Twitter account. This is how they see things. And of course, there's an organization called Protests Youth is their Twitter tag, who had a Black Lives Matter rally a couple of months back, and there was a guy who suggested that the Latvian security police should go after them because they're obviously terrorists because they want to support Black Lives Matter. And of course, there were instances of violence, most of them by police attacking protesters in the U.S., but also protesters getting back at the police. So the first thought was, these protest young people here in Latvia are going to start, trashing buildings and setting cars on fire and all that stuff, none of which happened. So that was another one of these nonsensical scares that comes up here now and again. Well, we'll see what these kids do when the fall comes. There are issues here. The climate change, Black Lives Matter is still actual, and all that. Ah, yes, and there was a bit of a little tizzy in the parliament because one of the National Alliance parliamentarians, Jānis Iesalnieks, retweeted, but he didn't really retweet. He translated the LGBT free zone sticker from Poland and put it up on, put it on his Twitter account, or he retweeted someone who had translated it and run it on Twitter. And he was called before an ethics committee of the Latvian parliament for alleged hate speech, or I just took a shower. Things are falling out of my ears, but for alleged hate speech, which was a little bit over the top. I mean, I could see, on the one hand, that if you join a national parliament, you work by different rules other than the kind of semi-absolute freedom of speech under the 100th amendment to the Latvian Constitution or the First Amendment in the U.S. You sort of follow the rules. You don't behave like a total homophobic or LGBT hating lunatic, but Iesaulnieks got really upset and it was violating his freedom of speech. Well, if he wanted absolute freedom of speech, he should not have taken part in the parliamentary elections. Once you get elected to the Latvian parliament, you sort of have to follow their internal rules. Whether he should be criminally prosecuted for this, I think not. My opinion is that hate speech should be public and opposed with arguments and with calling these people out. I mean, what is it going to do to hide them? There, I'm a little bit at odds with the Mosaic, the LGBT organization here in Latvia, who was really shocked that the parliamentary ethics commission ended up not filing any kind of charges or taking any sanctions against the Iesaulnieks. And of course, Mosaic, the LGBT organization, was pretty upset about that. And I can understand them, but on the other hand, as I said, I would rather see hate speech being called out, and I would rather see haters exposing themselves than having them silenced or snuffed or deplatformed or whatever you want to call it. So that basically is one of the scandals here in Latvia. The other issue that is sailing up now and is being discussed a lot in the media is that of property tax assessments that will come into force in 2022, and that will see some incredibly radical rises in the valuation of properties, meaning that in some cases people will be charged unaffordable taxes on probably what is their only residence. And there's a movement now to kind of have a tax break or exclude from this tax anybody who is sort of has a place as their sole residence. This is not to talk about other properties, commercial properties or whatever, and then it gets pretty complicated as to how this will work out in practice. But it's getting a lot of people upset. And I think it'll be something that will be one of the dominant themes in Latvian politics as time goes on. As people come back for the fall session of the Latvian Parliament, the Saima, and so forth and so on. So it should be an interesting fall and a quiet August, banning that any other weird stuff happens. Well, that's about it from here, from me, Juris Kaja in Riga.